Don't forget, Reince Priebus was the first one to learn that he was fired by tweet. That was a long time ago now. But this thing that's going on with the president, Kellyanne Conway, and her husband, George Conway, really has an unusual pathology to the whole thing. Over the weekend and on Monday, George Conway kept tweeting about the fact that he believed that the president had some sort of mental disorder, narcissistic personality disorder, suggested that the president was not mentally stable enough to hold the office of the president. The president fought back. Kellyanne Conway stayed silent until today, when she did a brief phone interview with Politico in which she said of the president, quote, "But do you think he shouldn't respond when somebody, a non-medical professional, accuses him of having a mental disorder? You think he should just take that sitting down?" Kellyanne Conway siding with the president over her husband, going on to say, "The president is obviously defending me. He could privately say to me, 'Honey, you're a distraction. We love you. You'll always be part of the family, but go be with your kids. They need you. Go make $1 million an hour. Go do that, honey.' It is the opposite." So the president and Kellyanne Conway both defending each other. And meanwhile, Kellyanne Conway's husband, George, is kind of out there twisting in the wind by himself. There are some people who speculate that maybe the two Conways are setting themselves up for a Carville-Madeline sort of thing after Kellyanne Conway leaves the White House, but that is only rank speculation. The president also this afternoon, and this just happened, Neil, going after Senator John McCain again in a huge way at the only plant left in the United States that builds tanks. It's the Lima, Ohio tank plant where they build the M1A1 Abrams tank. And the president, who renewed his feud with John McCain over the weekend over that dodgy dossier that John McCain said a long time ago he got and thought he'd turn it over to the FBI, the president going after McCain on that and his Obamacare vote this afternoon. Listen to this.
I've never liked them much. Hasn't been for me. I've really probably never will. But there are certain reasons for it. John McCain received a fake and phony dossier. And John McCain got it. He got it. And what did he do? Didn't call me. He turned it over to the FBI, hoping to put me in jeopardy. When he finally had the chance to do it, he voted against repeal and replace. He voted against at 2 o'clock in the morning. Remember, thumbs down. We said, what the hell happened? He said 2 hours before he was voting to repeal and replace, and he went thumbs down. Badly hurting the Republican Party, badly hurting our nation.
Now, Senator John McCain's daughter, Meghan McCain, over the weekend showed outrage over what the president had said about her father. Did it again Monday morning on ABC's The View. But today on The View seemed to sense the irony in John McCain continuing to have the president's goat. Listen here.
I think if I had told my dad, 7 months after you're dead, you're going to be dominating the news and all over Twitter, he would think it was hilarious that our president was so jealous of him that he was dominating the news cycle in death as well.
But Georgia Senator Johnny Isakson, a close friend of Senator John McCain, did not see any irony in it at all. Listen to what he said on Georgia Public Broadcasting earlier this afternoon.
It's deplorable what he said. That's what I called it from the floor of the Senate 7 months ago. It will be deplorable 7 months from now if he says it again, and I will continue to speak out.
So there you go. Some of the president's Republican colleagues slamming him for what he's saying about John McCain. You know, Neil, we thought going into today that the feud with John McCain might be over, but then just suddenly out of the blue at that tank plant today, the president said, you know, I get asked a lot about John McCain. Well, let me tell you what I have to say about that. It was really quite interesting.
He cannot let go. All right, John Roberts, thank you very, very much.
What are we in for in the fight to make the whole Mueller report public? Let's bring in Chris Daszak, former senior investigative counsel for the House of Representatives and former assistant attorney general with the New York State Office of Attorney General. So, Chris, Mueller, as we just heard, provides a confidential report, goes to Attorney General Bill Barr. Barr can produce a summary, and you know what's going to happen. Everyone's going to want to read between the lines. They're going to demand to let it all out. They'll be looking at anything's redacted. You know, what's behind there. I mean, this thing is going to get, questioned up the wazoo.
You're right, Eric, and they're going to look between the lines. So I think what's going to happen is, rather than after it goes to Attorney General Barr, and he certainly has the legal authority to decide what he releases to Congress, but I think what's going to happen here, and this is related to what you said about reading between the lines, Congress, if Attorney General Barr decides not to release the report itself and just a summary, Congress will, and I think should, issue a subpoena for the report. If they issue a subpoena for a report, the key thing is obviously to redact anything that's classified. But other than that, this report should be public. The American people paid, I think, approximately $25 million for it. There were serious allegations made, and one way or the other, everybody should know. This report could turn out to show the allegations were that the president or people who work for him were somehow involved with collusion with the Russians. If that's the case, and this report demonstrates that, then that can be pursued one way. At the same time, it's important for the American people to know if there's nothing like that uncovered, and after almost 2 years and $25 million, if there's no evidence of that, the American people should know that too. And again, that could be obtained through subpoena by Congress.
You know, critics will say, is there a collusion illusion, or is in fact that meeting in Trump Tower, where Don Jr. and others out there meeting with the Russian lawyer, representing the government, as the email said, in support of Donald Trump for president, you know, how Mueller will come down on that, or whether or not that was, in fact, a meeting of collusion.
Exactly. And the only way to get to the bottom of it is not the read between the lines, as you said, Eric. It's, you know, the American people, they can read the report themselves and make their own determination. So with respect to that meeting that you're referring to, or any other issue, including the Steele dossier, the role that played in this investigation, because he came out recently and said he didn't even confirm certain aspects of the information that ultimately found their way into a FISA warrant. So this isn't just about one thing or the other. This report should really shed light on everything rather than guessing games and rumors.
And when you say everything, would that get into the funding of the Steele dossier? We've heard a lot about the DNC and Hillary Clinton's campaign and Perkins Co., you know, behind some of this, and supposedly the FISA court not being told about that.
Sure. That's a key issue. When you go to the FISA court, a federal judge, and you ask that federal judge to listen to the conversations of Americans, that's a serious matter. And if part of that was based on information that was politically derived or derived for political purposes to hurt someone, then that should certainly be known.
Meanwhile, this is not the only investigation ongoing. You have several others. Here's what Congressman Harley Ruda said about that.
The Mueller report is only one of 3 investigations going on right now, and it's focused primarily on what transpired during the campaign. You also have what's going on in the Southern District of New York and the Eastern District of Virginia. So we tend to focus on the Mueller report being released and that's going to answer all questions. It's not. It's one of 3 major investigations going on.
Yeah, and some say the Southern District, the federal investigation here in Manhattan, is the most important because they're looking into the Trump Organization businesses and allegations of Michael Cohen, you know, testifying that the Trump Organization inflated assets on insurance forms while deflated for tax purposes, and some speculation that there may have been some hanky-panky in that Deutsche Bank a mortgage in terms of your assets. You served in the Attorney General's office here in New York State. There are charges already from the Manhattan District Attorney's office that have been filed against Paul Manafort. What type of pitfalls are for the president in the future for this? Because you can't pardon out of that one because it's a New York State or local investigation.
You're right. And the pitfalls depend on what the substance, if any, is during these investigations. But the pitfalls, if the Southern District of New York uncovers any information about financial misdeeds with respect to whether it's the inaugural committee or any real estate deals, then there are obviously pitfalls. And as you pointed out, Eric, if the Manhattan District Attorney's Office pursues this case against Paul Manafort, there is no pardon. The only one thing that everybody should keep in mind is any information that comes from Michael Cohen has to be independently verified. He's an admitted liar. He's going to prison for lying, and he clearly has animosity toward the president. So it's okay to follow up on his leads, as you have to in a government investigation, as long as that information is verified by either independent documents or independent witnesses.
Well, the reports say that Deutsche Bank is cooperating. So wouldn't this all be in the paperwork? Wouldn't there be a paper trail if there was something wrong, or if it is all kosher?
Well, there would be, if there is something wrong, or if it's kosher. Either way, you would have a paper trail, and presumably, because if they do have Deutsche Bank's records, I've reviewed very sophisticated bank records for investigations that I've handled when I was in the government, and they're extremely detailed. Deposits, withdrawals, transfers. So there would be a paper trail, and it should be easy enough one way or the other to get to the bottom of it.
And finally, Chris, okay, your prediction on when we're going to see the Mueller report. I mean, everyone for weeks have been saying it's almost there. Andrew Weiss and others, I mean, they're peeling off. The investigators and the top officials are going back to private practice and law schools to teach. That's got to be a pretty good tip-off that it's really winding down.
I'm comfortable, Eric. I'll make a prediction that the report itself will be released, and if I had to guess, I think it's going to be released through Congress via a subpoena. In terms of the timing of the release of it, that I wouldn't guess, because as you know, they've been saying it's going to be released in 2 weeks just in public, not Mueller's team, but they've been saying it's going to be released next week for at least a month. So there's no telling when it's actually going to be released. And the only guy who knows is Bob Mueller.
Yep. And he, I guess, ain't talking.
He ain't.
Chris Staszak. Chris, always good to talk to you. Thank you for your insight.